Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the vampires from the movie Priest. Before I start, if you like videos on vampires and werewolves, I upload a new video every week, so if you haven't, please subscribe and maybe drop a like on the video. Before we get started on the vampires, I'm going to briefly explain the priests. When vampires were first discovered by humans, this led to a centuries-long war which devastated the planet, turning much of the surface into a dystopian wasteland. The priests are a special force of men and women trained by the church specifically to kill vampires. They are greatly skilled in combat, almost to the point of supernatural ability. Near the beginning of the movie, we see one priest was able to incapacitate several armed guards with ease in less than a minute. Now that you know what the priests are, we can get started on the vampires. The vampires of priests are different than most. Rather than humans being infected by a virus, these vampires are an entirely separate species, an ancient race that evolved underground. They have pale skin, large fang-like teeth, and possess immense strength and speed. They are able to move extremely fast and leap great distances. They also have no eyes. They might have had eyes a long time ago, but eventually evolved other senses that might have made their eyes redundant. They most likely navigate the world through vibration, some kind of echolocation, and scent. The common vampires are known as drones. These are the workers and warriors of the vampire hive, the most common of the vampires. Sunlight is fatal to them. These vampires are not weak to crosses, holy water, or any traditional weaknesses. They can be killed like any other biological creature. If a vampire lives long enough, they can eventually become a Hive Guardian. These are much larger and much stronger vampires that's primary job is to guard the hive from outside threats. It's unclear how long it would take for a drone to fully turn into a Hive Guardian, but presumably quite a long time. The most important of the vampires is the queen, just like ants or bees. The queen appeared as a large pale red vampire with bat ears and has a large flap of skin that runs from her wrist all the way to her ankles, presumably used for gliding. She also has long claws used for attacking, but she leaves that to her drones. The queen is the highest rank in the vampire hive and is presumably the one who gives birth to all the drone vampires. The queen can seemingly communicate with the drones through a hive mind-like connection. Vampires are born in fleshy cocoons, just like the ones from Van Helsing. However, unlike the ones from Van Helsing, these are born in full size and ready to fight. The drones seem to have little intelligence beyond hunting and killing. The queen, however, is shown having an almost human level of intelligence and reasoning. The vampires live in what is called a hive, carved out underground or into mountains. It is a dark, damp place for the vampires to live. Somewhere like a hive is required for the queen to breed an entire army, as you need a lot of space for all of them until they hatch. They carve large caverns and tunnels through the rock in order to allow the large numbers of vampires to enter and exit the hive quickly. You see thousands of little areas carved out on the wall, these being used presumably to house the vampires while they're growing. There was a war between vampires and humans. When it seemed like humanity was doomed, the priests arrived to save the human race. The humans eventually won, and the vampires were driven to almost extinction. Although humans established what they call sanctuaries, which were a place where the remaining vampires could live without being bothered. These were prison-like structures with walls and gates in order to get in and out, as well as an area underground for the vampires that was locked with a hatch. When the main characters arrived, they quickly realized that there is no guards anymore, so these vampires have been left to govern themselves. They also come across some familiars. The priest says, "I thought familiars were illegal," and the other man states that no one really enforces it as long as it's voluntary. So these men wanted to become familiars, servants to the vampires. In this movie, a familiar is what happens when a vampire bites a human. When a human is bitten by a vampire, they do not become a vampire themselves. They instead go into this vampiric state, which makes their skin more pale, their eyes change, and although we never see them performing any feats of super strength or speed, it could be slightly greater than the average human, as well as they might live a longer life. One of the familiars refers to a vampire as his master, so the vampires might be able to give the familiars instructions somehow, through some kind of vocal communication or possibly through the hive mind-like communication. Although when a vampire bites a human, they become a familiar, a human can be turned into a vampire, and it's referred to as a human vampire. This is achieved by the queen giving her blood to a human, and this made the first human transform into much more than a familiar. As a human vampire, this man was granted extreme strength and speed, as well as appearing much healthier and more human than a familiar. A human vampire has all the benefits of a vampire, but is also immune to sunlight like familiars. It's unclear if the queen biting someone would have the same effect as giving blood. It's also unknown if a drone were to give someone blood rather than biting them, if their victim would become more or less vampiric. The priest that was turned by the vampire queen says that the Bible states the eyes are the windows to the soul, and because vampires have no eyes, they do not have a soul, which is why the church sees them as evil. But he says that he has seen the soul of a vampire, and it's much more pure than that of any human. He might have been able to see what he calls the soul of a vampire when he received the blood from the queen, and they might have established some kind of connection. The queen was probably able to sense that he was stronger than an average human and might be worthy of her blood. He also says that the vampires see themselves as great warriors that have fallen from grace. And after he was turned, the new human vampire, with the help of the queen, proceeded to try and launch a large attack on the protected city, showing great intelligence. When the human vampire locks eyes with the girl, she seems to fall asleep or almost pass out. So it seemed like he had the ability to almost mind control her or make her fall asleep with some kind of hypnosis. I assume this ability would be something specific to only the human vampire, and I'm not really sure exactly what he's doing or why she fell asleep. We see ruins of a modern city in what is now the wasteland. The remaining humans live in a giant holy city that's run by the church. They are protected by towering walls and a military force. But to live in these cities, you must live by the strict rules of the church. The city has a very ominous feel with loud speakers blaring religious talk, and the streets and buildings have a very industrial, raw feel. The city's catchphrase, if you will, is, "To go against the church is to go against God." They have these confessionals that contain a rudimentary AI to confess your sins to, and we see during the main character's confession that the answers the AI can give are very limited. Those who do not want to live under the rules of the church live in small towns in the wasteland, very similar to a town from Fallout. A man states that the cities think they are godless sinners, and that's the way they like it. Means they usually tend to keep their noses out of their business. Well, that's it for the Vampires of Priest. I hope you enjoyed the video. So far on my channel I've only been covering movies, but soon I'm going to start covering TV shows as well, and some of the first ones I'm probably going to be covering is The Originals, Vampire Diaries, The Strain, Van Helsing, and possibly a couple more. If you guys have any suggestions of which shows I should cover, please leave them down in the comments. I know a lot of people have requested The Originals and the other show that goes with it. If you haven't, please subscribe, drop a like. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.